愿主与你们同在。
与你的心灵同在。
恭读圣马窦福音。
主愿光荣归于你。
那时候，耶稣看见群众，就上了山，坐下之后，他的门徒来到他跟前，他就开口教训他们说：“神贫的人是有福的，因为天国是他们的；哀痛的人是有福的，因为他们要得到安慰；温良的人是有福的，因为他们要承受土地；木易如饥似渴的人是有福的，因为他们要得到饱飫；怜悯人的人是有福的，因为他们要受怜悯；心底纯洁的人是有福的，因为他们要看见天主；缔造和平的人是有福的，因为他们要称为天主的子女；为义而受迫害的人是有福的，因为天国是他们的。人若为了我的缘故而辱骂、迫害你们，捏造各种坏话毁谤你们，你们是有福的，你们欢欣踊跃吧，因为你们在天上的赏报是丰厚的。别忘记，从前的先知也曾同样遭受迫害。上主的圣言。
基督，我们赞美你。哈利路亚，哈利路亚，哈利路亚，哈利路亚。
Be seated. Dear Archbishop Hong and bishops, dear fathers, sisters, dear seminarians, brothers and sisters in Christ, esteemed government authorities, dear colleagues, members of the diplomatic corps and foreign representatives, peace be with you. I'm really honored that you're here this morning, this beautiful Saturday morning. We have gathered here to celebrate the Eucharist. Eucharist means thanksgiving. Today we join together in thanking God for the 70 years of diplomatic relations, or 70 years of official friendship between the Holy See and the Republic of China. It also marks the 90th anniversary of the arrival of the first apostolic delegate in China, Archbishop Celso Constantini. And today's Mass also gives us an opportunity to meditate on the Beatitudes. So I'll say a word about the anniversary and some words about the Beatitudes. And as we will see, the anniversary and what Jesus teaches us in the Beatitudes are not realities inherently opposed. On the 23rd of October 1942, the Holy See's daily newspaper, L'Osservatore Romano, published a note stating the following: the government of Chongqing, after having expressed several times in the past its intention to establish diplomatic relations with the Holy See, has now formalized the request. The Holy See, whose government has already declared its willingness to give favorable consideration to this intention, has accepted this request and has shown its approval to the nomination of Dr. Shi Shoukang, Chargé d'Affaires of China in Switzerland, as Extraordinary Envoy and Plenipotentiary Minister. For its part, the Holy See named Archbishop Antonio Riberi as Apostolic Internuncio. Our diplomatic relations were established and have been maintained on account of the will and desire and sovereign decision of the various presidents of the Republic of China and the various popes who have held office throughout these past 70 years. And on a daily basis, they have been developed and deepened on account of the hard work and dedication of the various ministers of foreign affairs of the Republic of China and their co-workers in the ministry and their respective counterparts in the Holy See. Here I would like to recall especially the various ambassadors of the Republic of China to the Holy See and their co-workers, as well as the various apostolic nuncios and chargés d'affaires of the Holy See to the Republic of China and their co-workers. I think especially of those who are still alive. My very capable counterpart, Ambassador Wang, in the Vatican, and his two immediate predecessors, Ambassador Tai and Ambassador Tu, who are here with us this morning, as well as my esteemed predecessors, Cardinal Cassidy, now retired in Australia, Archbishop White, retired in Ireland, Archbishop Giglio, retired in Malta, Archbishop Adriano Bernardini, the Apostolic Nuncio in Italy, Archbishop Julius Janus, the Apostolic Nuncio in Slovenia, who was here last year, Archbishop Joseph Chenet, the Apostolic Nuncio in Japan, and Archbishop Adolfo Iana, the Apostolic Nuncio in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who was just here this past week, Archbishop James Green, the Apostolic Nuncio in Peru, and Archbishop Ambrose Mata, the Apostolic Nuncio in the Ivory Coast. I have regular contact with all my predecessors, and some have sent a message of special greetings and congratulations on this occasion. At some point or another, nearly each one of them has told me how much he truly enjoyed his time in Taiwan and how very sorry he was when the notification of his transfer arrived. Considering the human lifespan, 70 years is a relatively long time. During this time, there have been positive and negative occurrences in the diplomatic relationship between the Holy See and the Republic of China, and there have been, and perhaps there still remain, certain challenges, although, in my own humble opinion, whatever challenges exist are not inherent in the fundamental nature of either the Republic of China or the Holy See, but rather are derived from external forces. In fact, the Republic of China and the Holy See, as has been mentioned before, on numerous occasions, both share a deep respect for human rights and the dignity of the human person, especially for religious freedom. We both share a commitment to work for peace and stability in the world. We both support the rule of law within and among nations. And we both have a concern for those people around the world who can use a helping hand in times of need. I also think that we share some similar experiences of being small among the world's powerful countries. Perhaps it is possible for us to learn some things from each other. With regard particularly to this last point, I want now to focus attention on today's gospel passage, the Beatitudes, which is a program for each individual Christian, for the members of the church and their mutual relations, for the church and her relations with secular authorities, and for the Holy See in its relations with the 179 countries with which it maintains diplomatic relations, including the Republic of China. The Beatitudes would also be a good program for all nations in their relations with each other, as well as for each human being, Christian or not, in his or her own personal life. My reflections are based on a passage from Pope Benedict's book, Jesus of Nazareth. In English, we can make a play on words with Beatitudes. Beatitude, of course, is from Latin. It means happy or blessed. But sometimes in English we can say it's a be attitude, an attitude of how to be. The Beatitudes are words of promise. At the same time, though, they are criteria for discernment of spirits, and so they prove to be directions for finding the right path. Jesus' disciples, when he looks at them on the mountain, they are poor, they're hungry, they're weeping men. They are hated, they are persecuted. However, the situation of the disciples engenders a promise in the light of God. In the Beatitudes, Jesus teaches us that situations we normally think will make us happy do, in fact, not make us happy. And the situations we usually think will make us sad do, in fact, lead us to true happiness. The standards of the world are turned upside down as soon as things are seen in the right perspective, which is to say, in terms of God's values, so different from those of the world. It is precisely those who are poor in worldly terms, those thought of as lost souls, who are the truly fortunate ones, the blessed, who have every reason to rejoice and exult in the midst of their sufferings. The Beatitudes are promises resplendent with the new image of the world and of man inaugurated by Jesus. We should not understand the happiness to which Jesus refers as merely something in the future, but as something already present here and now. Jesus brings joy into the midst of affliction. The Beatitudes are a consolation and a promise. Although we share in the suffering of Jesus, yet we also share even now in the beauty of his resurrection. And this brings us a joy, a happiness, a blessedness greater than the happiness we could formerly have experienced on worldly paths. The Beatitudes express the meaning of discipleship. What the Beatitudes mean cannot be expressed in purely theoretical terms. It is proclaimed in the life and suffering and in the mysterious joy of the disciple who gives himself or herself over completely to following the Lord. This leads us to understand the Christological character of the Beatitudes. The disciple, each one of us who follow Jesus, is bound to the mystery of Christ. His life is immersed in communion with Christ. The Beatitudes are the transposition of the cross and resurrection into discipleship. But they apply to the disciple because they were first lived by Christ himself. When we examine attentively the text of today's gospel, we realize that the Beatitudes present a sort of veiled interior biography of Jesus. When we look at Jesus, we see that he's the one who is truly poor and truly meek. Jesus is the one who is pure of heart and so unceasingly beholds God. Jesus is the peacemaker. He is the one who suffers for God's sake. The Beatitudes display the mystery of Christ himself, and they call us into communion with him. The Beatitudes are also a roadmap for the church, which recognizes in them the model of what she herself should be. They are directions for discipleship, directions that concern every individual, even though, according to the variety of callings, they do so differently for each person. But now the fundamental question arises. Is the direction the Lord shows us in the Beatitudes actually the right one? Is it really such a bad thing, after all, to be rich? Is it really bad to eat one's fill, to laugh, to be praised? Nietzsche sees in the vision of the Sermon on the Mount sees a religion of resentment as the envy of the cowardly and incompetent who are unequal to life's demands and try to avenge themselves by blessing their failure and cursing the strong, the successful, and the happy. Much of this has found its way into the modern mindset and to a large extent shapes how our contemporaries feel about life. Thus, the Sermon on the Mount poses the question of the fundamental Christian option, and as children of our time, we feel an inner resistance to it, even though we are still touched by Jesus' praise of the meek, the merciful, the peacemakers, and the pure. Knowing now from experience how brutally totalitarian regimes have trampled upon human beings and despised, enslaved, and struck down the weak, we have also gained a new appreciation of those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. We have rediscovered the soul of those who mourn and their right to be comforted. As we witness the abuse of economic power, as we witness the cruelties of a capitalism that degrades man to the level of merchandise, to a thing, we have also realized the perils of wealth, and we have gained a new appreciation of what Jesus meant when he warned of riches. The Beatitudes seem opposed to our hunger and thirst for life. They ask us to inwardly turn around and go in the opposite direction from the one we would spontaneously like to go in. But this U-turn brings what is pure and noble to the fore and gives a proper ordering to our lives. Behind the Sermon on the Mount stands the figure of Christ, the man who is God, but who, precisely because he is God, descends, empties himself all the way to death on the cross. Jesus teaches us that the path to happiness is the path of self-giving love. And as I suggested at the beginning of these remarks, this is true for each one of us as individuals. It is true for the Church's relations with society. It is true for the Holy See's relations with countries. It is true in its relations with the Republic of China, Taiwan, whose 70th anniversary we celebrate today. Only by putting into practice Jesus' teaching in the Beatitudes do we discover true happiness, authentic wealth and peace, and achieve real greatness. God bless you, everyone.